Now, the statistics is all about various terminologies which are always confusing, not only for the student but also for the teachers. Here are the two types of such terminologies. One is the margin of error and the other one is standard error. Now, what is the margin of error? The margin of error E is the margin of error is the amount or the value that is added or subtracted into the x bar, that is the sample mean, when we are calculating the this mighty confidence interval. What is the margin of error? Margin of error E is the value that we add, that is added or subtracted in the sample mean when we are calculating the confidence interval. And the confidence interval is the interval within which the population mean is present. And we always know, and we are repeating it again and again, that x bar is the sample mean, mu is the population mean, and mu should be within the sample mean, and sample mean should be a representative of the population mean. Now, the confidence interval is the interval within which the population mean is present, and when we calculate the confidence interval, here is the x bar, that is the sample mean, and here we have x bar minus E, and here we have x bar plus E. It is the margin of error, it is added on the right side, it is subtracted from the left side, and the answer is the confidence interval. And this margin of error, this margin of error is, now you have to concentrate what we are going to say. We are going to say a very important thing. The margin of error is standard error multiply by the critical value. And what is the standard error? The standard error is also called the standard error of mean, and it is calculated as standard deviation divided by the square root of n, and n is the number of samples. So, what is the standard error? Standard error, which is also called the standard error of the mean, it is the standard deviation divided by the square root of the n. What is the standard error or the standard error of the mean? They are basically the standard deviation of the means. They are the standard deviation of the means. Say we have a population and we take a sample and we get a mean of that data set. Then we again take a data set and then we again take a data set. Each time we will get a different mean value. How much these mean values vary from one another is the standard error of the mean. Basically, it is the standard deviation of the means, and the standard error is calculated by the standard deviation divided by the square root of the n. And then what is the margin of error E? Margin of error E is standard error multiply by the critical value, and we all know that the critical values are standardized, and for a 95% confidence interval, we know that the critical value Z is 1.96. So, I think we have tried to simplify what is margin of error and what is the standard error. The standard error is basically the standard error of the mean. It is the standard deviations of the mean, and it is calculated as standard deviation divided by square root of the n. N is the number of the sample. And what is the margin of error? The margin of error is the standard error that is multiplied by the critical value, and the critical value at the 95% confidence level, we know that the critical value is 1.96. And what is the margin of error? Margin of error is the value that is added or subtracted into the sample mean when we are calculating what? We are calculating this confidence interval. This is the difference between the margin of error and the standard error.